start with the least impactful glitches in Elden Ring.
Spooky, scary skeleton.
And we'll move towards the most heinous and disgusting ones as we slowly make our way through this list of FromSoft spaghetti code.
What the fuck?
Number 11. The Aros Swap glitch. For those of you who don't know, there are 3 types of bows in Elden Ring. The small bows, the medium bows, and the great bows. Small and medium bows share the same kind of ammunition, but the great bows use a special type of arrows called great arrows. Naturally, these were made to deal more damage than regular arrows or have special properties, such as the golem great arrows producing an area of effect shockwave when coming in contact with anything. The drawback is that great bows are much slower to fire than regular bows in order to balance their overall power. However, at one point in the game, it was possible to shoot great arrows with small bows. All you had to do was jump, shoot a small arrow, and immediately afterwards press the great arrow button. This would change the arrow shot mid-air, allowing you to have the power of great arrows and the speed of small bows, as well as making it quite the mix-up machine. It was pretty annoying, sure, but it doesn't even come close to what we still have in store for this list. Number 10. Perfume Nukes. If you're a follower of the channel, you may have seen our recent video where we discussed how absolutely dog water perfume bottles are. However, shitty weapon type aside, there was a moment in time where a perfume ash of war was severely bugged. Rolling sparks is normally used by shooting it forward as a line of hitboxes, but if you launched it at your feet, all of the hitboxes would detonate in the same spot, dealing unintended and astronomical levels of damage. It was quite funny when you one-shotted a boss with it, but real players in PvP weren't so happy to be on the receiving end of the nuking.
Man, I'm gonna break my monitor, I swear!
Despite its insane power though, people who were smart enough to not eat crayons would instantly recognize the threat and play accordingly to avoid being vaporized, being this the reason why this glitch is so low on the list. Number 9. Infinite Crimson WHL Bubble Tear. This is a crystal tear that upon consumption will not only protect you against elemental damage, it will actually heal you from it. The effect lasts for 10 seconds and it has a few niche uses, but it's nothing spectacular. However, if you were to do a glitchy sequence involving Holy Ground and the Golden Epitaph's Ash of War, you'd infinitely keep the effect of the tear after a few seconds of spazzing out like a crack addict. This glitch, of course, completely negated mages and elemental builds. Aside from being very easy to pull off, you still were vulnerable to physical damage though, so countering wasn't exactly the hardest thing in the world. Number 8. Tumble Buffing. This was a glitch that, if performed correctly, would allow you to buff weapons with special ashes of war where it'd normally be impossible to do so. Some of these effects were pretty funny and harmless, but others were not.
Man, I'm dead.
Tumble Buffing the Eclipse Hotel by using this glitch with weapons like the Magma Blade or Lader's Sword would cause these two to apply Death Blight with their respective ashes of war, usually ending up in an instant unaliving for the poor sucker on the receiving end. There weren't many more uses for it, and that's because Elden Ring players are not after fun stuff. They only seek death and misery. The reason this one is not higher on the list is because the glitch wasn't exactly consistent nor easy to perform, and outrunning people trying to glitch you out with it wasn't particularly a daunting task, unless you were an overweight Redditor. Number 7. Nayas Torch. Perhaps the only time in Soul's history where a torch was actually meta. Nayas Torch not only used to have absolutely humongous madness build up with its Ash of War, it also had the capability of applying any status effect coated in your main hand weapon with it as well. This would include any of your favorites such as Scarlet Rot, Bleed, or Death Blight. Eclipse Hotel should really be removed from the game, to be honest. Fortunately, the amount of Death Blight applied per tick was not as high as the madness, but if you were not careful enough, you'd end up frozen in place by the madness and penetrated by Godwin's tooty fingers from the inside out. It was also stupidly easy to perform, as all you had to do was use Death Flare on the Eclipse Hotel and assault that Ash of War button until your fingers bled. Number 6. Smithscript Weapons Scaling Glitch. Back when Smithscript weapons were introduced, people seemed to be busy pogging at the fact that you could throw them to notice that when you infused them with any elemental affinity, they'd keep insane scaling for both their physical and elemental damage. This doesn't sound like much on paper until you actually try these by yourself and realize that they deal insane buttloads of damage with every attack. Smithscript Cirque was the worst offender by a long shot due to being backhand blades, and we all know the kind of nasty toys those used to have on release. Executing the glitch was, of course, a no-brainer, as all you had to do was infuse the weapon and level the correct stat. But hey, this is Elden Ring we're talking about. I'm pretty sure at least one guy screwed up trying to recreate this glitch. Number 5. The chainsaw. Whether you're a PvE player, a PvP player, or completely unrelated to Elden Ring, I'm pretty sure that at some point you must have heard the term chainsaw, a very despised glitch where you'd spaz out the Serpent Hunter's Ash of War, giving it the moveset of the pizza cutter, but with the range and damage of the Serpent Hunter during the Rykard battle.
Impressive.
Anything that came in contact with this galactic gargantuan monster would be instantly ripped to shreds with little to no counterplay, unless you had shit connection with the guy executing the glitch. This thing managed to last in the game for a very long time, until it was finally fixed after the DLC's first balance patch. The reason it's not higher on the list is because despite its destructive power, executing it correctly was not an easy task. You had to have a flail equipped, backstep while blocking, press the Ash of War button, and switch to the Serpent Hunter before the whole animation ended. This little detail was the reason the chainsaw was barely used by the more casual portion of the player base, unlike the monstrosities we're about to cover. Number 4. The IGN glitch. Bleed Edition. If you ever had the displeasure of witnessing IGN's horrendous PvP guide for Elden Ring, you may already know what we're talking about. But for those of you who still have your retinas untainted by visual diarrhea, let me lay it out for you. First, you had to use an incantation called Fire's Deadly Sin, which covers your body in fire, dealing damage over time to nearby enemies. And then you had to use Blood Flame Blade on any weapon in your right hand. This would make every tick of Fire's Deadly Sin apply insane amounts of brutal, undodgeable bleed buildup, so losers would coat themselves in shit and chase you around until you bled to death. It was stupidly easy to use and very hard to fight if the enemy was not a complete doorknob licker. And if you think this is already cancerous enough, just hang in there, it gets worse. Number 3. The Carn Retaliation Ghost Nuke. For those unfamiliar, Carn Retaliation is used to nullify enemy magic projectiles and turn them into 3 homing swords that will attack an enemy in your proximity. At one point in the game's lifespan, this thing was bugged, as the projectiles were not only invisible, they'd also brutally one-shot you regardless of how much HP you had. Imagine the confusion of inexperienced players when they see their magic disappear in front of them, only to be brutally assassinated by the void itself. It was incredibly dangerous, and anyone with basic motor functions was able to replicate it in all of its nefarious glory. So glad that garbage is no longer in the game, to be honest. Number 2. Helmet Swap. This glitch would not necessarily unalive you per se. It would only leave you moulding out of frustration. Back when the game was released, the Corolos Glintstone Crown and the Olivinus Glintstone Crown were bugged. As you may have guessed by now, the gist was that if you swapped between these two in rapid succession, you'd heal huge amounts of HP in a very short time, for free. So if things were not going exactly how you wanted them, you simply had to run away and swap between the two until you were at max HP and run back into the action. Or not, depending on how much of a tumor you felt like being. This thing was incredibly asinine to deal with, and it had the capability of dragging out fights basically forever without you being able to do anything about it. But it is not the worst glitch in the game because it technically doesn't hurt you at all. But the final one on the list, oh boy, let me tell you. Number 1. The IGN glitch, Deathblight Edition. Possibly the lowest you could go in terms of being a sentient bag of fecal matter in this game, the Deathblight IGN glitch functions exactly the same as the Bleed Edition. But instead of a bit of damage every now and then, it was instant death.
Look at me.
All it took was one drooling mutant to apply Fire's deadly sin, buff the Eclipse Hotel with Death Blight, to reach you and make you make amends with your inevitable finale. The most stupid and deadliest glitch to have ever existed in the history of Elden Ring. Absolute garbage.
Know your fucking place.